Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be getting into the Democratic strategy to regain the male voter. Oof. If you've been appreciating the content so far, consider subscribing, as it does help a lot. I think the intro speaks for itself, so let's just go ahead and get into this. All right.
The midterms fast approaching, and a full 6 months after November's electoral drubbing, the Democratic Party appears to still be in fact-finding mode. The New York Times reports that party donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters. And they're spending $20 million on an effort to try to figure out how to speak to young men. Quote, "It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces."
Is this like the most out of touch thing for anybody else? Like, let's get together in our wealth and elitism and discuss what we think people we view as less or typically view as less want. That's the most disconnected strategy I think you could possibly come up with. The biggest thing that they're trying to pursue, what creates virality, how to make viral things and what people like. It's not even a matter of changing your message or changing. Damn. $20 million going to go down the damn drain because people that often feel that they are better than you, whatever you want to call that political party, Democrat, left, liberal, obviously it's a bit of a spectrum, but they control the narrative of we're smarter, we're more successful, we are more educated. There's an attempt of a hierarchy based on capability there. And so the decision is to get together with people that have that kind of thinking and think, what do they want? Like to point at someone across the way from you. I'm going to assume what you like. This is what I said back in Shoe on Head's video. For those that haven't seen it, you're more concerned with how you sound and not how you are. Prepare to lose again.
I want to bring in Megan Hayes, a former special assistant to President Biden, and Basil Smikle is back with me. You're both smiling. Donors and strategists, Megan, have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters.
Yeah.
The Times says these new projects can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. What do you see in here?
Well, it's great that we're being a little bit more introspective. That's always helpful. But I think that the Democrats have forgot that maybe we should just talk to people like people. We don't need to do studies on it. We don't need to meet at hotels. How about we just go to community meetings and meet people where they are on social media and their different forms and platforms that they are. But I think that the Democrats have forgot how to talk to normal people about things that are really important to them, like the economy. So it's, I think, a really good lesson to learn, but I also think we just need to get back to basics.
Yeah, I think, Basil, another very...
She put forth some good points. She's led off with the idea, okay, we're finally being a little introspective, but notice how there's a little bit of humor there because not really. If this is the strategy, damn.
Informative little phrase.
And I think in addition to that, it's like, okay, maybe that's just the planning phase. But even so, the left really wants to lose, it seems. Like you really want that shit just handed to you again. I don't understand any defense of the criticism so far. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
And you're the academic here, but when you're trying to figure out the syntax, language, and content, are you getting ahead?
Yeah, no, you're not. This is not, I really have no understanding what that is because honestly, if somebody needed to come talk to me, just come talk to me.
Yeah.
Actually, go find me and come and talk to me. Don't do it in a hotel. Don't study me like this is some academic exercise. That is exactly why we're not winning because because Democrats have been accused of looking and sounding too elitist. That's a problem. And the truth, look, the reality is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. You know what strikes me? Because if you talk to some of these folks, and I can just tell you anecdotally, but, obviously there are lots of people doing focus groups on this, that these folks don't like Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and most of them won't vote for Donald Trump but they don't have a darn good thing to say about the other side.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? When don't you start?
That's a little offbeat. I would say that that's hardly the case. Yes, does a body of people feel like they had to choose between two evils? Sure. I think a group of that exists. But to say that the people that are Democrats felt that way? No. I think that they saw a candidate willing to do the things that you weren't doing. So they went that way. They overlooked the Donald Trump mannerisms, if you will, and the personality. And they said, what is this man saying he's going to do? That is the premise of that vote. And I think that's the premise for a lot of people. It's not even that they felt like, okay, I'm conservative now. No, it was more of an essence of, I'm Democrat and I'm comfortable voting for Donald Trump this election. And I think that was the case for many people. It's so stupid that this is like progressive and regressive in its own sense, because you're trying to be introspective, but then you still can't admit things and you're still trying to draw the consistent narrative at the same time. No wonder you ain't doing nothing. And in the free market of ideas, no wonder that these people didn't want to be on freely spoken podcasts, because they knew that they had no idea what they were doing. And it's why Kamala Harris, when she was trying to run, she didn't want to go to the Joe Rogan podcast. The only way or method that she was willing to go there is if there was restriction on what he could discuss. Man, y'all just taking constant L's.
Out ahead if they really dislike the other guys?
Well, here's a good example. There's been a lot of conversation about what people knew about Joe Biden and when did they know it. To Megan's point, if you actually go into communities and talk to voters, they're not asking about Joe Biden. They're asking, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And if if Democrats don't have an answer for that question, they're going to continue to lose support. Find answers, go into communities, actually amplify what neighborhood organizations, we talked in the last segment about violence disruptors. Talk to those folks because they're in these streets. There are really good examples of how people have taught each other, ministered to each other, clothed and fed each other, because particularly in the African-American community, we've always done that. So amplify those stories. But instead, we're held up at hotels talking to each other.
Megan, the Times also writes that Democrats have led, indeed, focus groups where voters are asked to name an animal that best describes the Democratic Party. One man said, a deer in headlights. You stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway.
And you got hit several times over. This is a deer that got hit because of the headlights, then came back into the road and was just like, nah, that was a fluke. Let's do it again. And then got hit again, is still near death, limps back into the highway, and then looks at headlights again, be like, nah, I swear, guys, this is the way, and gets hit again. Now you just dying on the side of the street because you ain't shit. Yeah.
Changing perception, obviously, it's not a 1 month thing. It's not even a 1 year job. But what can Democrats do? Because the midterms will be here before they know it.
Right. I mean, the Democrats didn't get into this place of one election cycle. It wasn't just 2024. This has been going on for many years. So I think it's going to take the Democrats time. But I do think that that Congress was very aligned on their messaging with the bill that was passed in the House. And I think that they are very aligned and they're out there and talking to their communities and their constituents. And I think they need to be aligned on that and continue to stay aligned on. They care about the economy. They care about keeping 14 million people with their health insurance, and the 18 million kids keep getting food. And I think that those are the things that the Democrats are aligned on. I think they need to continue to stay aligned on what's important to the American people.
Yeah, there's a bit of controversy around the big, beautiful bill. I don't know enough about it to really discuss it, but I hear opposing sides. And it's a little bit of a push and pull.
And what's important to the moderates, and that is the economy. It's the cost of housing, the cost of education, the cost of groceries. Those are the things that impact everyday people. And, you're totally right. No one is talking about Joe Biden and who knew what when. They're talking about how much it is to pay for groceries and how they're going to get their kids to school every day. So it's just, we need to be more aligned with where people are who are actually voting and not what the DC bubble is.
There's a whole lot of point about reaching into the community and finding out, or at least listening, because when you detach yourself by socioeconomic status or what you believe to be more capable as other people, how the hell are you ever going to empathize with people that you don't think are in your alignment? I think that's the little essence of maturity. It wasn't just a little bit of people discussing why they were suffering in reference to the economy, talking about the groceries, talking about what they can't do and how the cost of living and the cost of employment is just on this terrible scale. It was also a little bit of blame game. People really felt that organization was the root of all evil. And that was the premise. And it was felt holistically on both sides. That's something that you can't really wash away. I mean, and then you want to push that organization or that administration as like, no, it's still the answer. Nah, let's go back to the deer analogy. And that's kind of the same thing there. In the essence of discussing these things in the open market and on things like podcasts, having the courage to come to these platforms and be able to discuss things openly, I feel like that was a pretty critical point too. I mean, you recently just saw Bernie Sanders go on to Andrew Schultz's podcast, and Andrew Schultz did a great job of bringing it home in various different ways and then allowing that sense of authenticity to shine bright as hell. Say what you will about Andrew Schultz, say what you will about Bernie Sanders, but the look on Bernie Sanders' face time and time again is exactly why they were not doing well in the market of free ideas. It doesn't sound good when you don't have an answer for the reasons of your poor decision making besides the conspiracy theories that are all over the internet. In addition to that, you had very high-end streamers like Hassan Piker who were saying the reason why they're winning is because there's far-right extremism propaganda existing in masculine environments or environments that foster a sense of personal growth.
Massive amount of right-wing radicalization that has been occurring, especially in younger male spaces, any hobbies whatsoever, whether it's playing video games, whether it's working out, whether it's, I don't know, listening to like a history podcast or whatever, everything that they see is right-wing sentiment being expressed by individuals that they find charismatic.
The idea that natural inclination of competition, seeking a greater sense of self through information, knowledge, intelligence, or physical development, that doesn't make it right-wing radicalization, nor are these fears where it's being propped up as this thing to automatically choose. When people are more conscientious, they typically drive towards more conservative beliefs. What I think he meant to say is that he's not going to reach what he doesn't impress. If we have a history of poor demonstration of character, we're not going to appeal to mature audiences or audiences that are pursuing any form of maturity. Because as surprising as it is, it's not attractive to complain. It's not attractive to point fingers all the time. If anything, you look like a symbol of weakness and you look like one of those people that's constantly drawing out the manipulation of guilt. If someone is more self-oriented and they're willing to focus on themselves, they don't care about the blame game that you're playing on whatever streaming network you're deciding to be on. And just because they don't listen to you doesn't mean that they're seeking right-wing radicalization. You're just not appealing to someone improving themselves.
Blame internet algorithms for so much for so long. This automatic assumption that any dissent from liberal mainstream thought could only be caused by manipulation or brainwashing from podcasters is honestly
You're just not impressive. So out of touch. Take the L, take some responsibility, and realize that you messed up. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. You can concede. It's all right because there's a method of learning there should you decide to do that for once. And it's a bit of frustration because a lot of people were Democratic coming up and seeing this version of Democratic methods of moving, it's so out of touch with historical Democrats that existed in the 90s and the 80s. They don't, and the people that were that political party then are also out of touch because, and obviously not all of them, because I feel like some people are realizing like, what's wrong with my party right now? What's wrong with my political affiliation right now? This ain't right. This is not how we're supposed to behave. That's kind of what you're seeing. It's like, where did we lose ourselves? And I think that there's some ample points that we can obviously point to over the past, I would say, 15 years, 16 years, maybe. The point is that if this is your strategy to regain the young male vote, here's the thing. You already fostered this terrible predatory environment preys on their existence. And the groups that you tried to foster required submissiveness upon entry. You don't want men to exist as men. You wanted men to exist as followers and lapdogs. There was no essence of liberty or freedom being pursued in that regard. And we can't for a second think that this was some kind of mistake. This ain't a oopsie. This was an intentional tactic that was brought on by these organizations, and it failed. And if they want to say that, oh, this was a mistake, no, it wasn't a mistake. You made this happen. You need to apologize for having this intention. That's what the apology is for. And perhaps that's what further introspection can be for. Making that decision that says, we were malicious upon this. But it just seems like you can't be 100% with that. And I think there's a reason for that. But I think the Democratic Party can't really redeem itself until they make that plain and simple. Is that this is what we tried to do, and we were wrong for doing this, and we're sorry. Let us prioritize the thing that democracy has always prioritized and go about it in that direction. That's what I think. Now, obviously, I'm not some political major. I'm not a political scientist. This is just me gauging the mood of the people and then gauging, in addition to that, statistics that display various approval methods or disapproval methods and how people felt about this person, how people felt about that person. Obviously, it's a lot of feelings for sure, but that often dictates the vote. Another thing, I guess, on my last point is people often think it's just about policy. No. It's not. If people have poor interpretations and they allow very toxic forms of compassionate tolerism to exist, you're going to isolate somebody eventually. And I'm not saying, oh, the small group. I'm talking about you're going to isolate a majority eventually when that is what you allow. It is the way that the left has moved recently. That's been the problem. And in addition to providing a different characteristic or a different perspective and approach, yes, policy was one of the underliers about that. Looking at various things like immigration and how that became a problem over the past term, and how it doubled, triple, quadrupled, whatever the total number was in that one interview that we saw with Kamala Harris. Right? It was obviously a problem. And then I think that policy was used as a force multiplier of sorts. Like, here, this is who we care about. This is what we care about. Now look at our policies that reinforce these things. Because there's a lot of people that didn't vote for Trump, not because he had good policy or bad policy. They just didn't like the dude. That's not voting on the premise of policy. And so you got to keep in mind that the left had this monopoly on character assassination. Prior to that, you had the previous president, Barack Obama, shaming people for not supporting their movement. Like, what? You thought that was the move? And what does that have to do with policy? No, you made a fool of yourself and you thought this was the right decision. Get out of here. Get out of here. Because you lost the faith of so many Democrats and so many people in that party. And until you rectify that in the manner that I feel that I put forward, because I think that's fair, maybe we can turn the leaf and start discussing a more competitive political environment. Because when you assume that you have the grasp and monopoly on various voters based on demographic data, you're completely fooling yourself. There's a benefit to competition. There's a benefit to the right and left kind of struggling that combat or conflict with each other, because now they're going to try to one-up each other. Just don't make it in a manipulative means like you plan to with this stupid ass strategy. That's what I think. And that's not to say that the right doesn't have poor strategies too. Yeah, I'm sure they do. It's not broadcasted in this manner for sure. But I think that all groups have problems. That's my honest input. And I think that for the left to do something like this, stupid, dumb. Go back to the drawing board, touch roots with the people that have troubles, and maybe you'll learn something here or there, and stop keeping your head in the sky, because you can't see the ground when you're too high up. That's all I got to say about that. Like or dislike as always, and go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below for what you think about this strategy for you. Do you think this is going to work? Do you think that this more propaganda force spewed into the direction of voters is going to change anything? Do you think that that's going to cull the extremism of the left and as it exists and how they've already been attacking young men forever? Like, what do y'all think? Because I think that there is a populace that exists in the left that will never allow the happy white male voter to exist or young male voter to exist in general. That's just me, because I think that that's just too much of a monster now. The left is now just kind of split. And as much as the right is kind of splitting too with their bullshit infighting, right? Something that we've discussed recently, for sure. Especially if you've been watching the news or watching that Joe Rogan podcast every now and then. So those are my thoughts. That's all I got to say. And like always, thanks again. And I'll go ahead, see you next time.